just because we have a lack of inventory in California, I believe because I just got to go to what I know with California. I don't know about the other states, but we're in a good market still. There's a lack of inventory. Our population's there. We're going to continue to grow. We don't build fast enough. And that's some of the stuff that was brought up on the red tape with building. But so even as we see interest rates at a high, we still see property selling. We still see multiple offers. So that alone tells me that we're in a healthy, okay market. It's tapered off, which needed. When our market was bouncing up 10 grand every month, I'm like, that's not healthy. That's not good. The only thing is, I didn't know that rates were going to go up so fast. Mm-hmm. I thought the brakes were going to be a little slower. Mm-hmm. They pumped the brakes pretty fast, but that's okay. We needed it because if we didn't have that, we'd be in trouble. So I think the brakes being pumped allowed our market right now to kind of ease into our new economy, and I just still think real estate's great.
Hey, welcome back to the Pursuit of Property podcast. I am excited because today we are sitting with a friend of ours, a mentor of ours, and somebody that started with us at the beginning of our career. And it's fun to have him sitting across from the table from us. So welcome to the podcast, Maurice Moe Money Gonzalez, manager at Iron Key Real Estate.
Yeah, it's good to be here, guys. Yeah.
Moe Money, he's back in the flesh.
That's it, dude. Come on.
Yeah, and I still remember when you guys both started. I was like, man, are they really of age? Did we check their ID?
We still look too young to be doing this.
Yeah, I'm like, you got a birth certificate over there?
Like, who let these guys in the office?
Man, it was cool.
Well, Maurice, let's give a little backstory here. We met you back in 2018. You're the manager over at Iron Key Real Estate. Talk to us a bit about how long you've been in the business and how you got started.
Okay, it's now been 20 years in real estate. And so I started in 2004. So I watched the market crash, watched the market come back. I started off in real estate based off of I was always, as a kid, intrigued about development, real estate, and that was kind of my way into this world. And as a younger teenager, I actually worked for an investor. I was his assistant. I would take notes as we drove. I'd organize his bills so when he went to the office, he can just pay them. And then when he bought a rental, since I was a young kid, he'd stick me in there to go paint it with whoever he hired. And so here I am as this 18-year-old, 19-year-old. I'm the boss of some older guy and telling him what we need to do to paint this property. And then I'm back in the office. So it was pretty cool. That was my first little taste of real estate as a kid. And then as I got older, I'm like, well, I still want to be involved in real estate. And then those early 20s go by pretty quick. And then I'm like, well, let me get my license and dive in. So
how did you get the gig as the assistant to this guy?
There's further backstory, but when I had got the job, it was supposed to be for a summer. And then it ended up being like a 2-year period. And, I was basically doing grunt work to helping him run his company. And I'm a kid, so I just, did whatever was necessary.
Were you getting paid, or was it just for the education?
No, I was getting paid. I had a brand new Toyota Tacoma. I had a company car. Yeah, so
dang,
it's pretty cool.
Come on, dude.
Yeah.
So it sounds like it's basically been real estate. It's always been real estate from the start.
Technically, yes, because then from there I worked at a lighting store that did custom lighting for custom homes. So then I was going to job sites on, back when Lake Van Ness was being developed. So got to experience being in those neighborhoods going, wow, this house is bigger than the department store, some of these houses. So,
yeah.
So that's how that era started. And I was always intrigued. And I'm like, well, I'm getting older. I need to dive in now. And then obviously when the market crashed, no one knew it was crashing. And now I reflect back, I'm like, oh, there were signs.
What were the signs?
Well, things were moving too fast. people were, the way the houses were selling, house prices going up so fast, and it being so easy for someone to get pre-qualified, and still didn't quite know the dynamics of like, that's not good, that's not healthy. And then I worked for my uncle who was a mortgage broker, and he's the one who said, hey, yeah, those aren't good loans. His business was doing a refinance on A paper, which is everybody with great credit. And so that was his focus. So I really didn't know what was going on the other side of the loan process at the exact time when I started. Then I'm like, oh, hey, there's this 100% financing. He's like, oh no, definitely like, good product, but you want to make sure the person still fits the box because that rate's going to go adjustable. And if they can't afford it, then and they can't refinance, then they're going to be stuck with it. Again, we didn't know the market was going to shift either. But that was a learning lesson in itself. Just knowing that, okay, well, if you're obtaining a loan, make sure you can afford that true payment. And so now here we are in a different market decades later. And everybody who obtained a loan the past decade is off their true income. So when everybody's waiting for a crash now, it's like, well, hey, they borrowed with what they truly can afford. So most likely it's not going to default. So anytime that discussion pops up, I'm able to relate to what I saw before to what I see now.
So what year did you officially get licensed? Because we're talking the time period we're talking about, obviously, with the recession, 2007, 2008. What year were you officially licensed?
04.
04.
Yeah.
So you had a couple years under your belt. Just at that time, are you just slinging houses, gaining experience before this kind of shift starts to happen?
Well, that first year I was in my own bubble of working on refinances because I was just basically
as a loan officer's assistant or a loan officer.
Yeah, I was processing, so I knew how to stack a file, send it to underwriting. I knew
Nice.
all that type of that part of the business. So I thought, okay, everybody has good credit and refi and cool. And then I'm like, well, I was intrigued about the sales side. I'm like, well, I got the license, so I can do that side. I go, you know what? I'm going to go hang my license over here, and I'll sell you homes because at the time he was buying stuff, and I'll start building my book of business. So then that's in that 05 era is when I dove onto the sales side of things.
I mean, I don't know all the details of your backstory. I've always known that you knew a lot about a lot, but it sounds like just getting started in the business, you started when you were a teenager with an investor. You start getting an idea of what that world looks like. You start working with lending, getting a better understanding of the lending world. And then you got your real estate license. By the time you got started, you knew way more than we knew when we got our license. I mean,
well, yeah, but that's a good and a bad because at the time I'm in my mid-20s, and then I had a little bit of an ego when I shouldn't have. And I thought like, oh, I have all this knowledge. I'm just going to kill it. And then, the market starts shifting and you're like, I guess I'm not going to kill it.
What did that even feel like?
For me, I was okay because I didn't have kids. I didn't have a family. So you just had to buckle down. You actually had to just sell more real estate. And back then houses were 80, 120 grand. So it's like, you just had to go after it.
And so as the market starts slipping, was the idea just like, I heard you say the word buckle down, like just cut down your expenses, work long hours, and just sell more volume? Was that the game plan, or how did you even like survive that?
During that time period, I lived with my brother Alex. And so there was a turning point where I was like, hey, do I go get a job? And he said, no, you, stick to what you want to do, and we all got your back type of thing. So it was a cool family discussion. So I'm like, well, here we go. So at that point, it was just buckling down and staying focused. So from there, I transitioned over to a bigger office. I went to Coldwell Banker, and because I needed to be around the current events of what's going on in real estate, and then what's a short sale, what's a foreclosure, and then from there, that's where I actually gained more skills because I had a manager who basically gave us the roadmap of how to keep a schedule, what we should be doing weekly. And before that, I was a wild horse. And then at this point, you got tamed and you got refocused, retooled up. And then I mean, I was young still, so I'd stay focused, I'd make some money, and then I'd go have some fun, and then it'd be the restart. So when I see the younger guys do it, I'm like, well, I've been there, so totally understand.
So that season in real estate, you move over to a little bit of a bigger office. It sounds like you have some people over you that help you kind of sharpen up that focus a little bit. What happens in the next transition in the next season of real estate? How long are you at Coldwell Banker? And then what's kind of that next move in your career after Caldwell?
Okay, no, I've told the story multiple times because it's kind of fun, kind of when you reflect back about the history. But from Coldwell Banker, basically got more skilled up, refocused. At that era, my brother became the manager of Coldwell Banker, so he was running that ship, just fine. So then I'm like, hey, you've got this in control. I'm going to go work with this investor and go sell some homes. So at that point, I did go over to another company, and there was 4 of us guys were the acquisition guys, and all we did every day was write offers on homes. So in that era, which was kind of your, call it 10 through 12, we were buying 10 homes a month, and we were, they were flipping homes. So they were flipping about 10 homes a month, and then when the foreclosures and short sales start drying up, I'm like, I need to focus on regular business too, to have in the mix, because this, if you just rely on this source of business, you're going to be out of business. And then I realized for myself, I'm like, so in that same era, my dad had a stroke, and I realized, I'm like, I'm not happy where I'm at with business and whatnot. Money's good. My credit score is good. I'm a happy guy. But at the same time, like, this is not why I got into real estate at the time frame I was at. So I, at that point, called my brother up and said, hey, I'm going to come back to work with you, and we're going to open up a real estate office. So then that was the turning point there. Went back with him and said, hey, let's open up a real estate. He goes, well, give it some time, because he doesn't move quick. He wants to be more calculated. So then 2 years later, that's when we came out with Iron Key Real Estate.
And what year was that?
2000, was it
17, 16?
It was, I'm thinking the 17.
17.
Yeah.
See, and so that's when I met you, is briefly after that, 2018, office was over off of Cedar and Herndon.
Yeah.
And I mean, at that point I met you, and it seemed like you guys have been running it for a long time. Was it easy to start a brokerage?
It was, because Brandon already had the background of how to run a office and run an office smoothly, because he worked for a broker that owned 12 offices. So he already had the experience, running a ship. And so when we did do the transition, it actually was smooth, wasn't as stressful as you would think it would be. Mm-hmm. My wife said, hey, you guys know what you're doing. So she wasn't worried about a thing. Brandon's wife wasn't worried about a thing. And it just kind of went from there. And I just had a kid the month previous once we had opened. I'm like, I just had a kid, and now we're opening up this office. So it was kind of fun. I mean, that's life, right? Just different challenges and activities that we get to accomplish.
Dude, you're hilarious. Like, you are so level-headed about this stuff. Like, I would be so freaked out. You are just, your wife was on board. Brandon's wife's on board. You guys are like, let's just do it. Let's drop this cush position at a established brokerage, and let's just open our own place. And then obviously we joined you guys, and dude, it was a great experience.
Yeah, I was excited because the goal even to open up an office is just provide the agents of what us as agents want from a company. So it's like, well, here's the checklist. This is what we expect. This is what we want. And then just removing a little bit of the red tape. I mean, every company is going to have some red tape, but our market's always changing, and with technology, with laws. And so it's just being able to move with the market and not have, let's call it, a franchise telling you, well, you can't use that system because we already bought into this system. And it's like, well, that's a clunker now. And there's this other software that's better to use. And, it actually saves you money. And let's just use this, little things like that on the back end. And then as far as agents, it's like, well, we know what they're expecting, what they want. So our same schedule that you guys kind of remember of having our meetings and trainings, we did that from the beginning with 4 agents, and we're still doing it to this day. So just keeping the same consistent pattern schedule.
How has being a manager and part of opening and starting and running your own brokerage, obviously with Brandon, your brother, how has that affected your personal business and your personal transactions and your just personal growth and career in real estate with the opening up and the running of Iron Key?
I think it's just added a more sense of knowledge and confidence that you're able to give to your agents and to your clients. And then as far as, family life, our family lives real estate, so they're used to that crazy schedule. And now it's like kind of normal. But there is the luxury of that give and take schedule that we do have. You have your crazy evening, but then you also have an evening or a day that you're free. Whereas, it's a give and take. So.
Yeah. No, it's interesting to hear the progression because now we're 10 minutes into the podcast. You have investor experience from a kid, then you had lending experience, then you got your license, then you worked with a high level investor as an acquisitions guy, then you scale up a brokerage. I don't know if we've had many people on the podcast that have that breadth of knowledge and that many facets of real estate. Like, I'm surprised you didn't get into insurance, get into escrow. Like, dude, you know so much about so much. It's just, it kind of is mind-boggling that you've done that.
Yeah, and I've also, through the course of real estate, watched investors and real estate people lose their ass and come back. And I've watched them never come back. So that's a little scar in the brain saying like, well, hey, I saw this. So then you kind of run through your career a little cautious, but at the same time, you can't be too cautious as you have your journey of real estate and real estate investments.
Yeah. Well, and let's dive into that a little bit more too, because obviously, right, you are familiar and have experience not only, like Scott mentioned, from working with other previous investors building up in your career, but you've also invested in real estate yourself and actively invest in real estate. How did that jump go from maybe working for other investors and being exposed to what that world looks like you said, seeing people get burned and come back, or seeing people get burned and never come back? How did that leap look like for you personally when you started personally investing in real estate?
Well, this, I call it the second half of the career. Our economy's better, everything's going well. And it's like, well, now there's more loan products. There's more money out there, which is great. I still don't consider myself conservative. There's always risk involved in anything we do. Wake up and there's a risk. When it came to investing, I was always hesitant about borrowing money from someone else, private money. Now, fast forward, I'm comfortable if I'm going to take a loan out, I know what I'm going to pay back and the risk behind it. But I kind of have a funny story. So, get married. I'll try to do the fast story about it. Get married, buy a primary, so that the wife and I are living in the primary. And I told her, well, next year or 1 or 2 years from now, we're going to buy another primary and we'll keep this as the rental. So as one of those, let's buy it 5% and let's go get the next one. Well, as the time went by, and those years go by pretty quick, as you guys know, once you get married. Now, I run into a deal. A buddy says, hey, this guy wants to sell the house, it's Southeast Fresno. I'm like, hey, this is a deal. Let's buy it. Mm-hmm. So I buy it, but I don't tell my wife about it until a week before closing.
Oh,
and I go, Maurice. Hey, you need to go to escrow and sign a quick claim deed. And she goes, why? And I go, well, I'm buying this rental property. And she goes, well, why didn't you tell me? I go, well, I didn't bring it up because I didn't know if the loan was going to go through, and it's going to go through now. So can you meet me at First American, whatever company it was? So
that can't have worked.
It did not work. So, it's a funny story because the look on her face was like, oh man, I shouldn't have done this. So we're closing next week. So we wrap it up, and I'm thinking she's gonna be calm down. She's gonna be excited. Oh, we got this new rental. I go, hey, you want to go take a look at it? She goes, no. And I'm like, okay. So the following week after closing, now it's starting to get painted. She goes, hey, can we go take a look at it? And then we went over there. It's messy, and she goes, it's nice. And I'm like, she's still not excited. I'm like, what the heck? So I call up my brother Alex, and I say, hey, Alex, I go, I was supposed to buy her another house this year, a primary. I go, I just bought this other house. She's not happy with me. So in the next few months, I go, I need to get this other house going. And at the time, I just already relinquished cash over there, so no cash. So he goes, okay. So I go, hey, by the way, let's start looking at houses. And she's like, huh? I'm like, so we start looking at houses, and I got pre-approved on that, but don't have the down payment for the next house. So I call up Alex, and I'm like, hey, I need X amount of dollars for this next house. He's like, okay. So totally did the deal and bought her another house, and then everything calmed down. I'm like, yes, I did it.
Can I just ask you, why did you think the right idea was to tell her the week before closing?
I didn't want her to stress out that I was buying something, and I just wanted to make sure it was going through.
And the money for the new house was going away, and the image of the new house starts to fall apart.
It was. And so I did it again, but not at that scale.
So, I mean, you guys have also done flips and things like that. I mean, like you said, you've had exposure to people like really getting burned. Like with your time in the business, you've had to have seen people make purchases that maybe look good on, at the time, but in hindsight were very clearly bad decisions and they get burned. I mean, how did that affect your mental when looking at, getting an investment? I feel like a lot of people hear horror stories of rentals or of flips, and that holds them back. I mean, you still pulled the trigger, maybe not in the way that we would have pulled the trigger, but you bought the house, told the wife, you guys did the deal. I mean, was it hard to do that, knowing that you'd seen people get burned? Or
well, no, I mean, I know in the deal there was a ton of equity, so it's like you can't. Worst case, I go sell it and we're fine. Like, hey, you really do. So in that situation, yeah, it was calculated. There's no risk here. With other investors, you do see where they didn't buy right, and we don't know where the market's going, especially when rates had went up recently in the past couple of years. There's people that were in deals, rates were going up, prices were softening down, and we didn't know like where was it going to soften down to, and you saw people in that era, ready to flip a property and lose it, and maybe be a little negative. Or I've watched them where, hey guys, reduce, sell off, maybe make nothing, but don't make a loss. And then, especially if you're paying that private money, you're eating into that interest every month. Mm-hmm. It's a hot potato. So that I saw that in that era, not with my clients, but out there in the industry, you saw people like reducing their price, like chasing the markets. Like, no, reduce it, get it done, go on to the next deal.
Yeah.
And the experienced agents or investors know to do that, but you saw the newer ones
hang on.
Yeah, and they're like, no, just cut it and just get it done.
Well, explain the rationale, because there's going to be a lot of newer investors listening to this podcast who don't get why somebody like yourself, who has advised a lot of people, why would you be telling somebody to just cut your property now, price reduce, get it sold, if you know it's maybe going to lose you some money at that new price or even break even? Like, why would you tell a client that?
I mean, you're either going to take a soft L or a big L. Which one do you want? Either which way, it's going to be an L. And then the other thing is there's tomorrow. Tomorrow there's another deal. So go ahead and get rid of this one. Go get into the next one.
Yeah, dude, you've I feel like a common theme, and it's been obviously throughout your many years of experience, seeing a lot of not only market changes, industry changes, how the position of an agent and an investor has changed throughout the years. You were talking before we started the podcast, you just got back from Washington, D.C., dealing with some real estate stuff out there. I'm curious to pick your brain. If you were to do a temperature check on our market, where are we at right now, in your opinion?
Just because we have a lack of inventory in California, I believe because I just got to go to what I know with California. I don't know about the other states, but we're in a good market still. There's a lack of inventory. Our population's there. We're going to continue to grow. We don't build fast enough. And that's some of the stuff that was brought up on the red tape with building. But so even as we see interest rates at a high, we still see property selling. We still see multiple offers. So that alone tells me that we're in a healthy, okay market. It's tapered off, which needed when our market was bouncing up 10 grand every month. I'm like, that's not healthy. That's not good. The only thing is, I didn't know that rates were going to go up so fast. Mm-hmm. I thought the brakes were going to be a little slower. Mm-hmm. They pumped the brakes pretty fast, but that's okay. We needed it because if we didn't have that, we'd be in trouble. So I think the brakes being pumped allowed our market right now to kind of ease into our new economy, and I just still think real estate's great.
What do you think? I heard you say inventory. Is inventory, meaning the number of properties even available to buy, is that the only pillar holding up the market right now? Because the devil's advocate would say, well, what if inventory appeared, and I know that you've heard this because we've heard it, but there's people that are like, foreclosures are on the rise, the bankruptcies are coming, and there's been a marginal uptick, but it's still so small. Like, how would the inventory pillar fall apart? For those devil's advocates that think that the market's going to crash.
The thing is there's and I don't know the exact numbers of homes, but people are sitting on equity. So if I'm behind, if I'm in default, if I'm about to BK, I can go put my house on the market, pay off all my bills, and go rent a luxury apartment. I mean, because I'm sitting on hundreds of thousands of equity. And there's a ton of people with equity that if they're in a bad spot, they can easily get out. And now there's that segment that bought in the recent years that don't have that built-in equity. Yeah, they're the ones that are going to have the BK or the short sale, but that's going to be a few, and there's going to be a consumer to gobble that property up. So we're not going to see that crash.
What would have to happen for inventory to spike?
Inventory will spike if rates came down to a low again, because then the people that are currently in their 3-4%, they'll sell to go trade up again, but not until they're close to it. So for now, there's a pause with that inventory. So we're not going to see that rush until rates come down that low, and they're saying they're not going to come down that low. So we're gonna have this steady current pace that we're at right now.
Is there a world, because you're in the political world as well, kind of advocating for homeowners. Is there a world where construction can make up this gap?
It is if our government takes our California government takes off some of the red tape that can allow the builder to build at a good pace. And then obviously if rates come down, the builders can build at a little faster because money will be a little cheaper. So, I mean, there's not that as of right now, builders aren't going to build fast enough. So we're going to have that lack of inventory, and there's always going to be that demand. And our population's going to continue to grow in California. So things are going to get more expensive. There's going to be people that are going to be forced to rent, even though they have a great job and they have good credit. They just won't be in a position to buy. So they're forced and pushed out of the market. And then there's going to be that bigger investor that bought that home that they're renting out now.
Well, and how do you think, I mean, because we're we're at this standoff, right? If rates, people are saying we're not going to approach, obviously back the lowest rates almost we've ever seen happening during COVID time era, 2020, 2021, some people getting sub 3%, right? If we're not going to approach there and we're kind of in this standoff of what we've said is a healthy market, right? If people get stuck having to go and rent, I mean, what do you think that overall long-term does to the state of our market? Does it continue to be healthy that way? Obviously, the price of stuff will go up, rent will go up, but how do you foresee that playing out long-term?
I mean, I just think long-term, everything gets more expensive. The rents gets more expensive. The houses get more expensive. And unless there's an era of time where we start seeing more new construction going on, and then now we kind of see that we have more inventory to consume.
And in your opinion, too, the follow-up question is, if rates were to get down to even 4%, what would happen to the pricing of homes?
Your prices would go up. So that person that is waiting for the rates to come down, well, that $500,000 home will be a $550,000. So they were better off getting it now. And then once the that new buyer's buying at the $550,000 in that era, they can refinance because they have equity. And if they had mortgage insurance, they, figure out the numbers to get it off. But yeah.
What would you say to that person who, maybe has that really good job, right? But, especially right now, if somebody is not in a position to buy their home, maybe they're saving for that first down payment with, their spouse or by themselves. And they can be feeling kind of this sense of gloom, right? Well, stuff's only getting more expensive. Inventory is still low. Rates right now are very high. What would you tell them if they have that seed of doubt saying, I don't even think I could buy a first home. Like, that's unachievable for me right now, even with my good job, or will be even a few years down the line?
I would say they need to actually sit down face to face with an agent to go over a game plan. Versus, hey, I can't do it. They need to have that conversation with a professional to kind of give them this could work here, this could work here, and really paint the picture. Because there's been people that have been in that situation in the recent years where they're like, hey, I can't do it. And then you sit down with them and they're like, oh, like I can do a buy down of the rate. Okay, that works out well because then now I can get into this house knowing that in X amount of years I'm going to refinance, and also in my career my wages are going up as well, so it got me into the neighborhood I want. I mean, but it's having the conversation with the professionals that are going to dial it in as needed. Now, there's a ton of people throughout the years that never have that conversation, and they sit on the sidelines and they never got in, and they were the perfect candidate to be in the market.
Yeah.
Not just in a primary residence, but even in investing. They were in a perfect position. They just never talked to anybody to get the game plan of what to do.
Yeah. Well, and you shared something earlier that I think is pertinent to your question, and I think Maurice would agree, is they need to be able to afford the mortgage. I mean, at a bare minimum, you're talking about those people that couldn't afford the mortgage with the previous crash because they were, obviously there was a different way of qualifying people. But if you can figure out a way to squeeze the payment, like it's better to be in the game and be considering it almost like a forced savings account. Because, I mean, like you said, if we don't see a clear path to a price recession where homes are going to go down, and you're waiting for that day where the rates go down and you can afford the stroke, the payments are still going to go up because the price is going to go up.
Exactly. And those are the conversations we need to be having with the consumer.
Yeah.
Well, and you talk about the consumer needing to, have that conversation with, key term, qualified professional, right?
Yes.
You've talked about a lot of changes. When we talk about maybe some of the viewers who are listening or watching who are licensed agents or wanting to get into the industry in some way or another and be that qualified professional, what changes, what's happening in the landscape right now, just in our industry from the qualified professional side? Like, what's going on that people should be aware about when they're looking to get into the industry to help that consumer?
I really think it's just being skilled up when you're as an agent, even if you're a new agent, I've seen brand new agents that are rock stars. There's been someone in the business for 20 years, and that agent that's been in the business for a year has more knowledge than the one 20 years. I mean, so it's not about age. It's just about, are you skilled up to perform in today's market? There was, in our world, people love throwing around their years of experience, but how many transactions have you done to have that experience? And so that's a wild one in our industry. And
I don't know if you remember one time you did that with me. I was in a dispute with an agent and they brought up my experience and you were like, let's pull up how many deals this person did. And we pulled it up and you're like, nah, bro, they're selling less houses than us. We're fine. We're fine.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And they'll try to railroad another agent and it's like, come on, you're skilled up, your stuff. This is it. Yeah. So I think it's for our agents, not just new, but all of us in this coming market, just continue to be skilled up and knowledgeable about what's going on.
Yeah.
And this market, I would say now is forcing us to learn more. And we're in a world where we have access to education, which is neat because when I started in the business, we didn't have all the information. You had to pay for it or someone was guarding it and they weren't telling you the secrets. The secret's out.
This is the same thing Aaron Velasquez talked about like 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
He came on and said he joined around the same time as you. And he said it used to be everybody would defend that information. And like, unless you had it in contract or like needing a little help here or there, like they wouldn't tell you how they got this listing or how they got this buyer. It was like protected knowledge.
Yeah. How did you go get your private money? Who'd you talk to? Now, everybody's helpful. I had a deal where I need some money and I'm already in escrow. And I talked to a couple people and they're like, well, hey, I can get you some money and save the deal. And it just because they were open to the conversation and helped me out. So it was cool.
On the investing side, to rewind a little bit, I'm curious, and I didn't get to ask you when you brought it up. Do you still own that first house that you bought as a surprise to your wife?
That one I sold in December
of last year.
Yeah, I don't know if it closed January 1st or December.
How come?
That property, the tenants were moving out. It was the ideal condition where I didn't need to rehab it and I could sell it in its current condition for it to pass FHA. So, because it had a newer roof for the neighborhood, it had dual pane windows. It had vinyl plank flooring in kitchen and bathroom that I had already done. So I didn't even do a fresh coat of paint and I was still able to get market value. If I dumped another 10 into it, I would have just got my 10 back.
Right.
And I wanted to get that one off my plate because I knew going into it, I'd probably have to be redoing the bathroom coming up and redoing the electrical and plumbing on that one. So it was in the right condition to get sold, but then at the same time to hold it longer, I knew I was going to be dumping some more money back into it. And I'm like, we're at a peak for the neighborhood. I'm like, let's go. So that's how that one.
So was the plan to obviously get out on that one while you're kind of on top and rotate that into something else? Was that the plan?
Yeah. Well, the plan is because after I sold that, I didn't 1031 it. So now at this point, I'm waiting for the next deal. The next deal, the wife actually has say. So we're going at that pace this year. Yeah. Yeah, no, and I'm letting her pick out the next house, the next car. Like I'm out.
Relinquishing the reins, just
And
along
this is
for
why
the
you're
ride.
still married.
I'm getting better. I'm getting better, guys.
We love it. Well, Mo,
Well, she works with me now, and so she'll see someone come into my office and tell me about a deal, and she looks over at me, and I'm like, "Yeah, guys, like it's not happening right now." Yeah. So it's hilarious.
do you tell him to go talk to her?
She wants me to remodel her kitchen before we go buy the next house. So we're working on the details of that.
That's how it goes.
Yeah. That's what's going on in 2024.
Mo, the reason we wanted to have you on is because you are still a resource to us. I still have called you from time to time asking usually the most obscure question because you're the person that knows the answer to obscure questions. And we obviously value our relationship with you. We have a lot of listeners who want to get into real estate, and I feel like our opinion has always been put yourself around the right people. You guys have a brokerage that's equipped to bring in new agents. What's the right way for people who want to be around guys like you who have seen this industry, who are experiencing it live, to get in contact and maybe have a further discussion?
Well, to have a further discussion, just reach out on social media, on Instagram. And that's kind of the easier one. That's the messages that are most noticed.
Don't let the flamethrower scare you away.
Yeah. and from there, usually we'll set up an appointment with an agent or someone looking to get their license and just kind of go over obviously what our company is about, but what the industry is about. And then they can determine if like this world's a fit. The other thing that, because I experienced it when I was younger, is making them feel welcome to our industry and not big leaguing them, where maybe their thought process is not as big yet, but it doesn't have to be. Everybody has different scale of what they want, their goals. So when you're talking to them, not talking down to them, not big leaguing them, and just making them feel welcome to our industry. And then obviously they'll know if they're a fit with our office or if this world of real estate is a fit. And then sharing with them the pluses and the minuses, but obviously not scaring them as like, you do not want this come to the dark side, guys.
Yeah.
Well, I really like how you shared from the consumer standpoint. The number one most important thing right now as we continue to walk out this market and this economy is talk to a qualified professional to be able to, like Scott said, get in the game, right? So that's single most important advice on the consumer side. For somebody who maybe is in this position, like Scott said, who is either wanting to get in the industry, maybe brand new, or even if they have a couple deals under their belt, but they're trying to catch that wind in their sales and get that momentum, what's the single most important thing for those people, for those real estate professionals or soon to be real estate professionals as we walk out this market that's ahead of us?
Well, what tool or what?
If you had to say, hey, this is going to be the single most important thing to keep in mind or to take action on?
Yeah, a piece of advice or anything.
I would say, because I had to learn the hard way, is keeping a schedule. Because within that schedule, then you'll have what you're working on, what you're learning on, and so the schedule will be your guide, your path. And then from there is being consistent with your schedule. And then learning that, okay, I got off my schedule, I got off the path. Well, you can get back on it, because everybody beats themselves up that, hey, I didn't do this, I didn't do that. Well, there's reset button, get back on it and hit it.
That's it.
So build the playbook and run the plays.
Yes, and then if you get off the horse, get back on the horse.
Boom.
That's it. Thanks for joining us, Maurice. We appreciate it. Is there anything else you want to leave with anybody listening to the pod?
Yeah, stay ready so you don't have to get ready.
That's it. That's how you end a pod. I love it.
Done.
Well, Maurice, thanks for joining us, brother.
All right, let's do this again.
Let's do it.
Easy.